It was one of those soft, misty autumn evenings in Seattle when everything felt half dreamlike. The rain had slowed to a whisper, and the sky glowed faintly gold where the evening sun tried and failed to press through the clouds. The wet pavement shimmered beneath street lamps, the air carrying that clean scent that only comes after rain. Emma Collins was in her kitchen, surrounded by the simple sounds of her own quiet life. The dull thud of grocery bags on the counter, the hum of the refrigerator, the low drizzle outside her window. For months now, calm had been her companion. After a painful divorce, she had learned to piece herself back together, carefully and deliberately, like brushing dust off a forgotten picture frame. Her days were predictable but soft. She worked at a modest art gallery downtown, returned each evening to her small brick townhouse, and spent weekends painting by the large window that looked out at the gray Seattle sky. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She had built peace where once there had been noise, and yet even peace can grow heavy. Some nights, when rain tapped at the glass and the city lights blurred in the distance, the silence felt too large, too alive. That evening, while placing groceries into cupboards, a sudden knock startled her. The sound, quick, polite, unexpected, echoed through the quiet house. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door. A man stood on the porch, framed by falling light rain. He was maybe in his early 40s, a few years older than her, his brown hair still damp and his rolled-up shirt sleeves clinging slightly to his arms. In his hands was a small basket wrapped in a clean linen cloth. Beneath it came the rich, sweet scent of freshly baked bread. "Hi, I'm Daniel," he said with a small, shy smile. "Just moved in next door. Thought I'd introduce myself." For a second, Emma froze, unsure how to respond. It had been months since she'd spoken to anyone outside of work about anything that wasn't practical or polite. But instinct, gentle and curious, made her smile back. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Emma Collins," she said, her voice a little steadier than she felt. Daniel nodded and extended the basket toward her. "It's just some bread I made. I bake when I'm nervous. Moving always makes me nervous." That made her laugh. A soft, surprised laugh that caught even her off guard. "Well, it smells incredible. Come in for a minute if you'd like." He hesitated, then stepped through the doorway. His gaze wandered briefly around the space. Small, but warm, filled with the vanilla scent of a candle still faintly burning. Several paintings lined the walls. Open skies, empty streets, slow oceans painted in muted tones. "You paint?" he asked, noticing the half-finished canvas resting on an easel by the window. She nodded, brushing a piece of hair behind her ear. "Mostly for myself. It's how I pass the time." "Yeah," he said quietly, his voice slow and reflective. "Sometimes you need something that makes you feel like you're still here." The softness in his tone caught her. It wasn't sadness exactly, but there was history there, a quiet weight that made her wonder what kind of life he was leaving behind. She didn't ask. Some stories, she knew, revealed themselves slowly. They talked easily for a few minutes, their words moving without effort. Daniel told her he worked remotely as an architect and had relocated from Chicago, trading noise and chaos for damp air and calm nights. She told him about her job at the art gallery near Pike Place Market and how she was still learning to live alone after years of companionship. There was no stiffness between them, no reaching for things to say. It surprised her how natural it felt, like reconnecting with someone you hadn't seen in years, rather than meeting for the first time. After a while, Daniel glanced at his watch. "I should let you get back to your evening," he said lightly, already stepping toward the door. Emma hesitated, her words catching in her throat before slipping out without thought. "Would you like to come for dinner sometime? It's been a while since I've had company." Daniel's face softened. The faint smile he gave her this time was different. It reached his eyes. "I'd like that," he said. "How about tomorrow night?" "Tomorrow works," she replied before she could overthink it. As the door closed behind him, Emma leaned gently against it, feeling her heart race faster than it had in a long while. The silence of the house no longer felt lonely. It felt alive, expectant somehow. She hadn't planned on inviting him. The offer had just fallen from her lips like a secret that wanted out. But there was something about Daniel that felt safe. Familiar even. That night, She stood by the window, watching droplets streak down the glass, thinking about how strange timing could be. Just a few months ago, she'd found it hard to talk about her marriage ending. Now she was planning dinner with a man she barely knew, and instead of fear, there was anticipation humming quietly through her. She told herself it was nothing more than kindness, a polite gesture. But deep down, she knew there was something more there, something she couldn't quite name yet. The warmth of his smile lingered in her mind. The calm steadiness in his voice echoed faintly. She found herself wondering what he was doing right now. If he was unpacking boxes, if he was thinking about her as she was thinking about him. When she finally went to bed, her heart felt light. It wasn't love. It wasn't even attraction, not yet. It was possibility. Something small unfolding after years of stillness. As the rain whispered its rhythm against the glass, she whispered back softly to herself, "Tomorrow." The word carried quiet hope. Outside, the rain fell a little harder, tapping in rhythm with her heartbeat. Across the blurred yard, Daniel's windows glowed faintly through the drizzle. And there, without realizing it, both of them were beginning a story neither had expected. The next evening arrived quicker than she could believe. By late afternoon, the rain had stopped, the streets glistening clean under a pale sky. Cool air drifted in through her open window while she set the table, simple but thoughtful. She hadn't done this, set a table for two, in years. Pasta with herbs, garlic bread, a red wine she'd been saving for no particular occasion. Tonight, she decided, was reason enough. It didn't need to impress, only feel warm and real. By the time the clock neared 7, she had checked the mirror 3 times. Her sweater, a soft, deep green, matched the season. Her hair fell naturally over her shoulders. Her reflection looked the same as always, yet she felt entirely different. She told herself it was just dinner with a neighbor. Her heart didn't seem to agree. Then came the knock. When she opened the door, Daniel stood there smiling, hair slightly damp and a bottle of wine in hand. His jacket still carried the scent of rain and cold air. "I hope I'm not late," he said. "You're right on time," she replied, stepping aside. He looked around, noticing the gentle amber light from the kitchen candles and the soft melody of the radio playing faintly in the background. "It smells incredible in here," he said. "I can't remember the last time I had a home-cooked meal." Emma laughed as she poured the wine, her nerves softening. "Hopefully I don't ruin your streak." They sat across from each other, the flicker of candlelight dancing between them. The conversation came easily, as if the pauses knew where to rest. They started with simple subjects: his job designing homes, her experience at the gallery, small stories from their different worlds. He told her about growing up in Chicago, missing the distant sound of midnight trains. She spoke about painting with her grandmother as a girl, how that memory became a thread she clung to through the loneliness of her divorce. The air between them grew warm with shared laughter and quiet understanding. Neither tried to impress. It felt unguarded. Halfway through dinner, thunder murmured somewhere far away, and the dining room lights flickered. Emma lit another candle quickly, her hands steady but her heartbeat fluttering. The new glow washed the room in soft gold. Outside, rain returned, steady and rhythmic, as if punctuation for everything left unsaid. Daniel looked at her, his eyes catching the candle flame. "You know," he said quietly, "this feels familiar somehow. Like I've sat here before, maybe in another life." Emma didn't know what to say, so she only smiled, warmth rising in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt a kind of peace she had forgotten existed. Not forced, not complicated, just present. They finished the wine slowly, time stretching and softening between words. The storm tapped against the windows again, louder now but comforting. Neither of them spoke right away. The silence felt full, rather than empty. Daniel's fingers traced lightly along the rim of his glass. "I wasn't sure I'd say yes to your invitation," he admitted, eyes on the candle. "I usually don't say yes to things like this. What made you change your mind?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. I don't know. Maybe the way you looked at me the first night I knocked. It felt honest. Her breath caught unexpectedly. She wasn't used to that kind of sincerity anymore. That's rare, she said quietly, her voice trembling just enough for the rain outside to hide it. And though neither of them moved nor spoke another word, for a long moment something genuine had begun, quietly, gently, between the sound of rain and the flicker of a candle. That's rare, she said, her voice quieter than before. It is, he agreed. Honesty is hard to find these days. Outside lightning flashed. For a moment his face was lit up in silver light, calm, kind, but shadowed by something he wasn't saying. Before Emma could ask, his phone buzzed on Netable. He glanced at the screen, and all the ease in his expression vanished. I'm sorry, he said quickly, standing up. I have to take this. Emma nodded, trying to hide her disappointment as he stepped toward the hallway. His voice dropped low as he answered. She could hear fragments words like, help, and I'll be there soon, but nothing clear. When he returned, his face looked heavier. Is everything okay? She asked carefully. He hesitated, then forced a small smile. Just something I have to deal with. I'm really sorry, Emma. Tonight's been wonderful, but I have to go. She tried to stay composed. Of course I understand. He paused at the door as thunder echoed again. Thank you for dinner, he said softly. I mean that. Before she could reply, he was gone. The door closed, and the silence that followed felt different now. Not peaceful, but empty. The rain grew louder, blurring the world outside. Emma stood still, staring at the 2 glasses on the table, one still half full. She didn't know what had just happened, but something inside her told her this wasn't just about a phone call. There was more to his story, something he wasn't ready to share. She cleaned up slowly, trying not to think about the way he had looked at her before he left, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. The storm outside had settled into a soft drizzle, and as she blew out the candles, a small ache filled her chest. She had just begun to open her heart again, just started to believe that maybe she could trust someone new, and now it felt like the moment had slipped through her fingers. Later, says she sat by the window with a cup of tea, staring at the faint light from Daniel's house. His curtains were drawn, and everything was still. She wondered if he was okay, if he'd even think about her tonight. It had only been one dinner. Yet it felt more like the beginning of something that had been cut short before it could grow. As the night deepened, she replayed every moment in her mind, the way he had smiled, how he'd listened when she spoke, the softness in his tone. None of it felt casual. None of it felt like a stranger's conversation. She didn't understand why he left so suddenly, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't goodbye. Before going to bed, she glanced once more at his darkened window. You'll tell me someday, she whispered, though she didn't know if he could hear. Outside, the rain started again, soft and endless, like a song repeating its final note. Inside, Emma closed her eyes, the image of Daniel's troubled smile still vivid in her mind. She didn't know if he would come back or if that dinner would be their only memory. But deep down, beneath the confusion and quiet ache, she felt something she hadn't in years, the faint spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this story wasn't over yet. And though she couldn't explain it, she knew she'd see him again. Life had a strange way of bringing the right people back when you least expected it. Days passed after that stormy dinner, and Daniel didn't come by again. At first, Emma told herself not to think about it. He had said he was dealing with something, maybe work, maybe family. But silence has a way of growing louder with time. Every evening when she came home, she noticed his house next door. The lights were sometimes on, sometimes off, but she never saw him outside. The warmth of that one dinner had faded into unanswered questions. She tried to focus on work at the art gallery, but even there his face would drift into her thoughts. His calm voice, his half-smile, the sadness behind his eyes. She told herself it was silly. She barely knew him. Yet, it wasn't just attraction. It was curiosity mixed with something deeper, empathy. There was something about Daniel that felt unfinished, like a story waiting to be told. One evening after work, Emma came home to find a plain white envelope slipped under her front door. Her name was written on it in careful handwriting she recognized instantly. Her heart skipped as she picked it up. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should open it right away. Then she sat on the couch, unfolded the paper, and began to read. Emma, I owe you an apology. The night of our dinner, I got a call from my ex-wife. She's been struggling with her health and I had to go help her. It wasn't fair to leave like that, but it was something I couldn't ignore. The truth is, I didn't expect that evening to mean as much as it did. You made me forget, even for a few hours, how heavy life had become. I wanted to thank you for that. I don't know if this is crossing a line, but I'd like to see you again if you'll let me. Daniel Emma read the letter twice. It was short, honest, and quiet. Just like him. The words weren't romantic in a loud way, but there was something real in them. She could feel his sincerity in every line. She leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling, the paper still trembling in her hands. For a long time, she sat there without moving. She thought about what he must have gone through, the guilt, the confusion, the pull between the past and the present. She knew what it felt like to be caught between moving on and looking back. Maybe that was why his sudden disappearance had hurt more than she expected, because she understood it too well. The next morning, she found herself glancing at his house as she left for work. The curtains were open this time, and she could see him sitting at a table by the window, coffee mug in hand, staring outside. For a second, she almost waved, but she hesitated. He looked lost in thought, and she didn't want to interrupt. Still, something inside her shifted. The space between them didn't feel as cold anymore. That evening, she came home and reread the letter again. Every time it meant something slightly different. It wasn't an excuse. It was an explanation. And it made her realize how easily people assume silence means disinterest, when sometimes it just means pain. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft range light, Emma made a decision. She went into the kitchen and began preparing dinner. Simple food again, pasta and bread, just like before. She set the table with 2 plates, 2 glasses, and a single candle. The room filled with the smell of herbs and something else, hope. When she was done, she took a deep breath and walked next door. Her hand hovered over the doorbell for a second before she finally pressed it. Daniel opened the door within moments, looking surprised. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her standing there with a gentle smile. "Emma," he said quietly. I didn't think she held up the letter and interrupted softly. "I read it twice. You looked uncertain. I wasn't sure if I should send it. I didn't want to make things harder." "You didn't?" She said. "You made them clearer." There was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Then she added, "I made a dinner again, and this time I hope you'll stay." For a second, Daniel didn't move. Then a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "You're serious completely?" He stepped aside. "Give me 5 minutes," he said. "I'll bring dessert." They both laughed, a soft, nervous laugh that made the moment lighter. Back at her place, the mood was different from the first time. The air felt warmer, more grounded. Daniel looked more relaxed, though his eyes still held traces of the past. As they yachte, the conversation flowed easily again, though now there was a new honesty in it. He told her more about his life, about how his marriage had ended years ago, not in anger, but in exhaustion. He had stayed friends with his ex-wife, but she'd recently fallen sick, and he had stepped in to help her. "I didn't plan to disappear," he said quietly. "I just didn't know how to explain everything without it sounding messy." Emma listened without judgment. She understood. "Life is messy," she said softly. "We just pretend it's not." That made him smile. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," she replied. "But maybe it doesn't have to be complicated either." They talked 4 hours about mistakes, forgiveness, second chances, and the strange comfort of being seen by someone new. The candle burned low and rain began again outside, tapping gently against the windows. At one point, Daniel looked around the room and said, "You know, I don't think I felt this calm in years." Emma met his gaze. "Then maybe you should stay a little longer." He didn't answer right away, but the look in his eyes said enough. Later, when he helped her clear the table, their hands brushed. It was a simple touch, but it carried more meaning than words could express. Neither pulled away. It wasn't a grand moment. No confessions, no promises, just quiet understanding. As Daniel was leaving, he turned back at the door. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me another chance." Ka smiled, the candlelight flickering behind her. "Sometimes that's all we need. One more chance." When he left, the silence in the room didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of possibilities of something beginning again. Emma walked to the window, watching him cross the short path to his house, the rain catching in the glow of the streetlights. She realized then that her life had slowly begun to change, not because someone new had entered it, but because she had opened the door. And though she didn't know what would happen next, she knew this time whatever came, she was ready. The evening arrived quietly, the kind of night where the city seemed to hold its breath. Emma stood in her kitchen, not worrying about perfect dishes or fancy presentation. Tonight wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about presence, being fully there with the person who had quietly become important to her. She chopped vegetables, stirred sauce, and hummed softly to herself, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. It had been days since Daniel's letter, and tonight, she wasn't holding back when the doorbell rang. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door to see Daniel, casual and relaxed, carrying a small bouquet of wild flowers. "I thought these might be better than dessert," he said with a shy smile. Emma laughed, taking them. Perfect. They stepped inside together, and for the first time there was no pressure, no unspoken expectations hanging between them. The storm had passed, leaving the night crisp and clear. They moved around the kitchen like they had done this 100 times, chopping, stirring, laughing, occasionally bumping into each other. It wasn't orchestrated or formal. It was easy, natural, and real. As they worked, conversation flowed effortlessly. Daniel talked about a project he had been planning for months, a small community center that combined art and architecture. Emma shared stories about artists she admired and the gallery's new exhibit coming up. Every story seemed to open a door, and they leaned in, listening with attention that felt rare and intimate. At one point, Daniel paused, holding a wooden spoon like a microphone. "You know, you said you had other plans that night we first met," he said, teasing gently. Emma raised an eyebrow. "I did. I was planning to keep my heart safe, not open it to anyone new." He laughed softly. Clearly, that didn't work. "Oh," she admitted, smiling. "It didn't." The truth of that moment hung between them, light and heavy at the same time. Neither needed to push further. The acknowledgement of shared vulnerability was enough. It was the first step in building trust, in allowing something fragile to grow. Dinner was ready soon after. They moved to the small table by the window where candlelight flickered across their faces. Outside, the night was still, stars peeking through the clouds. Emma felt a calm settle over her as they ate, a sense of comfort that went deeper than any words. Afterward, they sat with coffee, leaning back in their chairs, letting the conversation drift into quieter corners of their lives. Daniel spoke about how he had been afraid to start over, afraid to meet someone who could truly understand him. Emma shared her fears too, the fear of being hurt again, of trusting too soon. But here, in the safety of their shared evening, those fears felt manageable. Their hands touched briefly on the table, brushing lightly. Neither pulled away. There was no rush, no pressure, only acknowledgement, the silent communication of two hearts testing the waters, discovering a rhythm they hadn't realized was missing. Daniel looked at her and said, "Softly but clearly, I wasn't sure I was ready to feel again. But this tonight, it feels like maybe I am. Emma's heart responded instinctively. I didn't think I would either, she admitted. But sometimes life surprises you. They spent hours talking, laughing, and even arguing gently over small things, like whether more salt was needed in the pasta or if the music was too loud. Every word, every gesture felt alive with the kind of energy that comes from genuine connection. The night wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for them. Later, as they cleared the table together, Daniel paused, looking out the window at the quiet street. I used to think I needed to plan everything, control everything, he said. But tonight, I feel like letting life happen is not so bad. Emma smiled, wiping her hands. Sometimes the best moments are the ones we don't plan at all. He turned to her, and for a moment there was no conversation, just a shared gaze. It was quiet, tender, and full of unspoken understanding. No grand confessions were needed, no promises, just the acknowledgement that they were both present, both willing to let something new grow. Outside, the rain began softly again, gentle taps on the window like a lullaby. Inside, the warmth of the room, the laughter, the shared silence, and the simple touch of their hands made everything else fade away. Emma felt something she hadn't in years, a sense of belonging, being seen, of being understood without pretense. As the night deepened, Daniel stood at the door holding his coat. Thank you for tonight, he said simply. Emma smiled, the candlelight reflecting in her eyes. Thank you for coming, she replied. He paused, then added, I think this could be the start of something good, something real. She nodded, feeling a calm certainty settle in her chest. I think so too. When he finally left, she watched him walk down the short path to his house. The night quiet except for the soft rhythm of rain. She returned to the living room, picking up the remaining candle and sitting by the window. The warmth lingered, the scent of the meal still in the air. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She realized that life had a way of giving second chances, moments where timing, courage, and honesty converged. Tonight had been one of those moments. No dramatic gestures, no fireworks, just two people sharing a night, allowing their hearts to speak softly, and discovering that connection could exist even after heartbreak. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the quiet. She felt hope. Not the naive kind, but the grounded, patient kind. She knew this was only the beginning, but it felt right. She didn't need other plans anymore. The plan was simple. Be present, be honest, and see where life led them. And as the rain continued outside, gentle and steady, Emma smiled. The night had brought her what she hadn't realized she was searching for. A quiet, steady start, a chance at connection, and the soft thrill of something new blooming in her heart. This time, the evening didn't end with a goodbye that hurt. It ended with the promise of tomorrow, unspoken yet deeply understood. And for Emma, that promise was everything.